Thanks for a lovely introduction. And I'm really privileged to be part of RAI for this forum today, on this forum today. I believe that the experience and the context that I have this far of how things are changing, I hope to make a meaningful time for all the audiences. So thank you for having me on this event today. To begin with, let me try and I'll try and put my presentation also, so a couple of slides. Give me a moment. Is this visible?
Not yet, sir. Not yet.
Now?
No, sir.
Now?
Yes, sir. It's now visible, sir.
Is this fine?
Yes, sir. Your presentation is on screen, sir.
Okay. Yes. So, to set the context of today's keynote, address that I have, which is on building future-ready learning organization. I believe that over the last couple of decades, we have seen the pace of change, and it's like a snowball. And as we get into, going forward, as we get into the future, there is no option but for this to really get further intensive. And therefore, it is important for us to realize the context of business and how it will shape up the future for learning organization. The over last decades, we never thought that we will change a broom by a machine. We never knew that the complex medical surgeries can be done by robots. So there is the amount of change that is happening is immense, and the complex problem that we currently see can be addressed by a machine that's playing a huge role in terms of bifurcating or dividing the complex problems into multiple physical form, and then we might have the options of choosing the right answers for us. The human is analyzing. Data is at the fingertip. Complex problems, as I said, can be addressed by a machine going forward. There is a likelihood that robots might be available to us in times to come, which will be very personalized robots, which will help us in terms of doing the cognitive system thinking again. Design thinking, which rests with most of us at head, probably can be addressed by machine. So the amount of interface that we are having with machines and AI and all those technologies is inevitable that it will change the way we actually learn on the job. And therefore, it is important that for us to realize that whatever that we can imagine or visualize, that's a possible thing. And that's a learning from, the Iron Man movie characters, etc. So I believe that there is lots which is changing on the ground, and therefore learning organizations has to adapt to the future ways of learning of generations like Gen Z, etc. Going forward, on the presentation, what we have learned this far is that the effectiveness of learning happens when the trainees are prepped for about 25% of the total training time, and 25% of the time is spent on taking them through the content, classroom learning, etc. And 50% of the time, the learners have to go through in terms of on-the-job learning, because the only way that we can extend or expand the learning over a period of time is to ensure that most of this actually happens on the job. Post-training expands through the continuous accessories. That's a possibility. having given the support of online presentations, coaching and online resources, and even coaching and counseling on the job. This strengthens largely the retention of knowledge, which probably that we have understood this far, that the retention of knowledge becomes less as the time passes by. The other important aspect that we probably can learn is that some of the studies basically said that the amount of concentration that individuals have on learning and going through certain content has actually reduced from 12 seconds earlier, which was our data of 2002, to now, which says that it's about 8 seconds. The amount of time reduction, the concentration that people have in terms of being able to grasp certain things has also become very micro. But in reality, what happens? In reality, when we give training, we actually prep the trainees for about 10% of the total time. 85% of the time we spend on trainees in terms of taking them through the classroom training or all the content that's available to us. And just 5% of the time is spent on post-training, retaining the knowledge, and therefore ensuring that the application of knowledge learned is embedded in the ways that we work going forward. That's the current scenario that we are moving on, and therefore, as we move along, there is this shift that we have to make from the time that we currently spend to time that we effectively use the learning journey that we have gone this far. What it says is that discovery and experience is the core crux of learning. And that's what I think learning organizations need to embed in the way they think of learning going forward. Moving to the next, the slide, acclimatization of content is crucial. Now, there are two sets of understanding that we have. One is a macro learning, the other is a micro learning. Macro learning helps us to do, the understanding of concepts well. It helps us to know the structure of learning, how that would, be understood. So a concept, upskilling, and new learning goes through a pyramid of, a novice learning to an expert learning. This journey actually takes longer, and 58% of the time must be spent on macro learning. The unstructured, and this is a structured learning, the unstructured learning content is constitute about 42% of the total time, which must be spent, and this is called micro learning. This is to ensure that the performance of the employees is higher. To give an example of how macro and micro would work, macro would be, like I said, that it helps to drive upskilling and conceptual learning. Micro learning can be a supplement to the performance. Just to give an example again, if there is a safety training that we are talking about, it is having taught through this structure of how the safety has to be ensured. Quick bite-sized learnings, some video content, when people go on the shop floor or on the places that they work, a quick bite of those trainings will help to ensure that the safety is prime and people are protected from any of safety hazards. So we need to be able to build a correlation of performance and potential model in the way the learnings are being implemented. Most learners typically also say that on-the-job learning, mentoring, and live projects helps us to contribute most value to the organization. And therefore, we must be mindful as we go forward to ensure that there is a good mix of unstructured and structured learning we embed in our learning structures. What I have also understood is that Netflix-like style of learning is a big shift in the domain that we are seeing in the times to come. What it will do is it will make life far more hyper personal in terms of identifying and curate the content through artificial intelligence, basis social ratings, machine recommendation, job relevance, and learner style. So these are inevitable trends, and we are seeing it come by. And I think learning organizations have to understand that these are inevitable, which we have to go through. The future of workplace, low touch economy. What we understand is that nearly 50% of the jobs opportunities will migrate to a man-machine collaboration. Now, what it will help us to understand what kind of jobs will then get recreated. Now, while we understand that the automation will disrupt about 85 million jobs, but it will also create 97 million jobs, new jobs. Now, what these jobs would be and what those trainings that we need to impart to our employees is a very fluid. We might not have any answer, but I think this is what we need to look forward to and continue to track the future trends that are happening and keep training our people with respect to what might emerge as a new learning, as a new roles that would make the workplace far more relevant for future. I was seeing, yesterday, one of the clipping. I was going through Times, site, and I saw that the recent survey in India itself basically suggested, which is an Indeed survey, that suggested that 71% of the employees are rethinking about their careers and may see a shift in a different career worth pursuing. Now, that makes life far more complex for us to understand if that many number of people within the organization are willing to look at a career switch, then how do we train our people on? Now, the paradigm shift that will happen in this whole process is to prioritize. The prioritization will happen around job satisfaction that the person gets, flexibility that the employees is expecting, and the kind of work-life balances that we need to create. There are various definitions of flexibility that is coming by. In the current context of COVID, we've understood the flexibility basically means that couple of days of work from home and couple of days of work from office. But the new definitions of flexibility which are emerging is basically saying that machines at work and I am at home and I am tracking what needs to be done, and that is the extreme of flexibility that one is looking at. In these scenarios, what do our learning organizations do? So therefore, leaders typically also need to ensure that they create a skill architecture team within the organization, which is constantly evolving capabilities that are emerging for tomorrow. And these are becoming far more difficult tasks for most of us to understand what will happen in the future, and therefore getting ready for that. But I think we need to be constantly on this discovery path, and we will find our answers going forward. Looking at the learning curve as an earning curve, the pace of our upskilling is lagging behind the pace of automation. Now, we are wondering within the space of the organization that automation is happening, but the skill that are needing to be imparted to our employees, that pace is not as good as the real work scenarios actually expect us to do. Till now, we have been happy with the employees being exposed to 3 days of learning every year. These are the typical dashboards that we have been presenting. The times that are coming by requires us to train our people 25 days a year. Now, and the other indicator is that companies are expecting 40% of the workers will require reskilling of 6 months and more. And 94% of the business leaders report that they will expect employees to pick up new skills. And that percentage was about 65% in 2018. And in 3 years, we're talking about that need be about 94%. So the fluidity that we are currently encountering is humongous. And therefore, our leaders, our learning and development team needs to be far more stronger in understanding the business context first, and being ready and building an organization within to ensure that they are able to bridge the gap of skills between the pace of automation and pace of upskilling. The roles that we feel would typically be critical in the years to come. On the skill side, while we are talking about learning potential, innovation, computational thinking, and growth mindset, what it is possibly saying is that learning potential will ensure that the agility in the organization is far higher. With innovation, what we're trying to say is that that the consumer experiences has to be far more ahead of the competition and should become a competitive advantage. So innovation should be a competitive advantage. Computational thinking is all about algorithmically thinking. What is a rational thinking? What is a logic and the business? When you integrate both of that and then come out with algorithm thinking on what needs to be done, this skill will become far more important in times to come. Growth mindset is what we are saying, that preparedness for future has to be far more stronger. The roles that today we don't know might be a bot facilitator. There would be a role which could be a VR experience architect. The amount of VR that will get used in learning, we need to ensure that for each subset of the business, the VR experiences are rightly being, rightly being navigated. It's being built up for people to understand the business and complex problem that it faces, and are able to find solutions to that. There are a lot of algorithms which will be defined for all kinds of machines. They will have their own biases, and there are cases of few organizations that we have encountered, which basically says that algorithm biases actually took a wrong decision, and therefore somebody has to sit back and check the algorithm and how things are moving, and are able to build or eliminate those biases from the algorithms that we have created for our machines to take decisions on. The purpose of why people come in the organization and how do we retain them going forward will be completely driven by the purpose that they come with and what we need to align with the organizations. So the roles that we anticipate will emerge would be completely different from what we currently see. So unless we know what these roles are, unless we are prepared for these eventualities in times to come, how would we prepare our employees to remain contextually relevant for future? Skills are becoming internal form of currency. Learning curve is earning curve. Skill anxiety, I guess 94% of the employees will stay longer in a company if they invest in learning. Growth mindset will be, the growth mindset, it will say basically that be open-minded, get comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty. Show strong situational awareness, have a greater sense of preparedness, have clarity on what others expect from your leadership. Take ownership, grow with people is something that we need to ensure that we embed in our ways of working. College grads are better equipped today with the tech skills, but they lack the onslaught or on the softer skills that are required for them to have. So I think we need to build our workplaces with skills of future and hard skills of the future and soft skills of the future. Look at how Gen Z learns. Gen Z's learning is about 51%. Learning happens through experimenting, simulation, and projects. Most of the time when we want to learn on any subject, what we do, we start immediately Googling. We go to YouTube and access content, and we are little bit prepared with those terminologies or that knowledge. The platforms that are used by the learning departments or learning functions probably are lagging behind in terms of the knowledge which resides in the social forums or in the forums which are digitally available. And therefore, if we lag behind, the set of Gen Z which is supposed to be learning more on the VR and more through virtual learnings, experimenting, simulation projects, and video and search results, we have to start making content relevant for them to be able to consume this content and learn through that. 20% of the population of Gen Z will be there in our workplaces in about a decade maximum. Unless we prepare our organizations, how would we build? So far, what we have always understood is that 70-20-10 rule applies. 70% learning in class, 20% in projects, and 10% through supplementary learning. look at the way things would change. It will be more on the job. It will be more through the experiments on virtual reality, byte learning, and immersive classes. This is how the times are going to come, and therefore our preparedness with respect to how we create our learning functions have to be aligned with this. This is again a great insight. Fortune 500 companies adopt the method of coaching and mentoring. The insights that we have is that only 20% of men and 16% of the women feel that mentoring programs are a value in their development. Imagine the 80 or 84% of the people within the organizations aren't feeling that mentoring programs are even remotely helping them. When you ask about feedback, now the performance systems that we enable in the organization basically says that you have quarterly reviews, and then you have a yearly review. I think with the pace of change that is what we're seeing, we have no option but to have a continuous feedback system structured within the organization and making it work. Because if this continues to remain a concern, then I think we will lack in terms of being able to prepare, give right advices to our employees with respect to the feedback, so that they can improve on the performances. So the question is not about whether the feedback process is good. Why it is failing largely is basically because we as managers don't know how to give feedback. And therefore, I think these are some of the structures that we need to ensure that it is built up in the way we give the performance inputs or feedback to our employees to do well for the times ahead. The other thing that is also important is that while we deploy coaches whenever there is a concern that we face in the organization, but we never take initiatives with respect to coaching our own managers to be better coaches. We need to push our employees towards that agenda to ensure that we are able to derive best benefit of productivity through our people within the organization. Look at this. This data is very starking data. Rewire for productivity. iPhone, launched in 2007, and the growth of iPhone, in the market grew substantially. You look at 100 million Twitter users came by. 1 billion of smartphones people currently use. But what's happening to productivity? The productivity is stagnating. Productivity isn't growing. That's the feel that we generally get. And why does that happen? That happens because there is no time to learn. Average US workers spends 20% of their time in, say, reading, answering mails. 80% of companies rate their businesses highly complex or complex for employees. Fewer than 16% of the companies have a program to simplify work or help employees deal with the stress. And at the same time, they don't have time. And this is actually a real problem that we are currently facing. Across multiple organizations rather, and multiple geographies that I am privy to, we have tried pushing the agenda of learning higher. But what's happening is people are actually busy with sorting out mails. People are being pulled into a lot of meetings on and off. The amount of time that they end up wasting on activities which are not productive for future, that's leading to no time scenario for most of them. And this is becoming a major challenge, and therefore we need to relook at how to ensure that we are able to build time for employees. The only way to address this query is to ensure that learning becomes part of work. This perception this far that we have had is that learning is something employees have to do outside of work and on their own time. And in such cases, the urgency of work invariably trumps the luxury of learning. So therefore, we need to come to a scenario where if learning becomes part of the workflow, then it breaks the barrier of time, but delivers learning in a moment of need and often making it more effective. If you look at the learning leads to happiness, this basically says that heavy learners versus light learners are. Heavy learners are 21% more likely to feel confident in their work, and 74% more likely to know where they want to go in their career. Medium versus light learners are more likely to feel confident in their work, 5% of them. And 15% and 32% more likely to know where they want to go in their career. This also basically says that learning has reached the stage of being a vehicle for a better employment brand. And we have learning, and even yesterday I was talking to somebody. The continual learning is part of our life going forward. How do you ensure that that gets built up in our ways of working? That's important. Here, the heavy learners versus light learners, more than 5 hours a week is construed as heavy learners. 1 to 5 hours is about medium learners, and light is about 1 hour and less in a week. Now look at this. Amongst this circle, only 7%. Isn't this a bell curve? How do you ensure that this subset and this subset moves towards this direction? That's the journey that we have to take. To ensure that our employee base remains relevant for tomorrow, and they're highly engaged, because learning will become an important element with respect to creating a culture of learning, and therefore retention of employees in our workplaces. And that's about it from my side. This was the last slide. I hope the content, the data that speaks for itself is a good insight for us to really seriously think about how learning will become so important in times to come, and therefore create an organization, the structure of the organization, which helps us to ensure that people go through the learning journey on a daily basis. So thank you, Hugo. Thanks, RAI, for this time. I hope that I will make the audience time more valuable. Thank you.